I call this meeting to order. This is a Livingston Parish Ordinance Committee meeting. Today is Tuesday, July the 25th, 2023. It's a few minutes after 6 p.m. Let us stand and say a word of prayer. Dear gracious and most heavenly Father, we just thank you so much for this wonderful, beautiful day, Father, and for allowing us all to gather here safely to conduct parish business. Tonight, we just ask, Father, that you be with those who have lost loved ones in their life, Father. We know that's difficult to lose someone in this physical life that we live today, that we know through you, Father, that we can have eternal life if we make the right choices, Father, if we so choose to do the right thing and to do your will. And Father, just want to pray, Father, that you be with the needy, Father. If it be your will, just help those and help others to help those, Father. That we just do what we can to just be there for those in time of need, Father. And we pray for the sick, Father, that you just be with our loved ones, Father, as we go through as they go through sickness in this life, Father. That you just heal them and help them, Father, and just in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Now let's say the pledge, Gary. You want to say something? Gary, will you lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I just want to thank everybody for coming tonight to help the Livingston Parish Council and the Livingston Parish Ordinance Committee, work to make improvements to the local laws that we're governed by. And just want everybody here to know how important they are to this council and this ordinance committee to help us get this right. So that being said, let's just silence our cell phones so that we don't have any interruptions during the meeting. And let's do a roll call for the ordinance committee.
Mr. Mack.
Here.
Ms. Sandifer.
Here.
Mr. Wascom.
Here.
Mr. Delatt.
Here.
All present.
All right, so we don't have any, under new business, we do have two, and it's under old business, but really and truly, I think we got two items under new business, right? And those two items, one is to discuss mobile home placement and name subdivisions, and the other is to discuss some possible changes to the policy and procedure manual for regulating council agendas, for regular council meeting agendas. And so we're going to discuss that in more detail now actually. So let's go agenda item 3A. This was scheduled to be on the meeting by Councilman Scooter Keene, and so we're gonna invite him to come and give us as much information on this change as possible.
Thanks, Shane. Scooter Keene, District 3 Councilman. Many years ago, Mr. John we did an ordinance barring people from putting trailers in brick and stick type subdivisions, and so we made it a waiver, which it was a good thing, John. And then we made it to where they would have a list that if we gave a waiver for any in that subdivision, they wouldn't have to come back to us ever again. They go to permitting, boom, you get it, you get your permit. Well, we've had a couple of 2 or 3 different situations where we allowed like a hardship trailer or someone after the flood. I did one in my district after the flood and didn't realize that it was lot 1 of a subdivision that was a huge subdivision behind it, but not actually on the street. And so then they started letting people put trailers all in that subdivision. So what we want to do is bring it back to where, and we've been trying to get rid of these waivers, but I don't think is there as many of them, Ms. Dee Dee, coming in as there used to be to try and put them in named subdivisions?
We do still have
I think we'll still keep the list, but that they'll have to send any of them to us for the waiver so we can check and make sure it's something we want to allow and it just doesn't happen automatically. Now, that's up to you guys. I'd like for y'all to, feel it out and see what you think.
Go ahead, Randy.
I have a question, Scooter. I think I'm on your team here. You're saying if there's a named subdivision and there's already a trailer there, that a waiver's not required.
Right, there's a list, but we may have allowed them to place that one trailer for 2 years or something, then it's got to come out and they got to build a house.
Okay.
Whereas on the list, it don't show that, so they go, oh, well, there's a trailer in there, it's on the list, so we can go ahead and just give it many more permits.
Okay, this is what I remember, and y'all correct me if I'm wrong. Since I've been here, and I think Thursday night, we got a couple more on it, mobile homes and regular residential homes, we said that they couldn't divide in a named subdivision.
Right.
And we've been giving those waivers to those people. So this would do away with the waivers? Or
No,
wouldn't?
it would still be, that's a total different situation, whereas they want to come in and divide a 1 acre lot in a subdivision that every single thing in there is 1 acre, then we'd tell them, no, you can't divide that into two half acre lots. But this is just for house trailers in named subdivisions that were built not to have trailers in them.
Okay.
Because we just wanted I want an extra level of security so that it doesn't just happen to somebody and then they call me and they go, well, wait a minute, there's not supposed to be trailers in our subdivision.
Right.
Because
Protecting
DD&M's not
property
doing
values.
anything wrong at all.
Yes.
It's a list.
But I guess what I'm saying is it is two issues, like you said. It's
Yeah.
two
Yeah.
different. I was wondering if we can fix them both. I like what you're saying, and I'm agreeing with what you're saying. But how about the ones that already have the trailers or houses in them?
Oh, and then they want us to just divide it?
And it just.
And if we did it one time, they wouldn't have to come back? Or
That was the point that I was trying
Yeah.
to make too. For instance, if you're R2, what is that, 4 houses to an acre or whatever? Okay. So if you have nothing but R2s in this subdivision, and that means 4 houses to an acre, and someone's got 2 houses on an acre,
and they want to put
and he wants
two
to
more.
put one more, say, or
Yeah,
2 more.
or
He
two
can put
more.
2, whatever he wants to put. If he's done, and we would have to give a waiver for that.
Right.
So we gave a waiver in those subdivisions for the last couple of years. Why do we maybe not have to keep giving the waivers? It's mandated that looks like that's what's
think
going to happen.
We had discussed having a couple other things that had lists. Remember that, where they wouldn't have to come back, because we got tired of hearing the same waiver that passed
Correct.
anyhow.
That was my point.
On that division of property like that, I think they really need to come to us.
Okay.
I really do, because
Okay.
that could turn into something that you didn't want to happen either.
Okay. Well,
But y'all just mull it over, and if you think that's the right way to do it, there might be a better way to do it. Dee Dee, you got a better, come up, I'm done.
Is there anybody that would like to talk about it?
I'll stay close in case I gotta go back.
Go ahead, Dee Dee.
So I need some clarification. You need to come up here too.
All right, fine.
In the book, mobile homes typically aren't just for a short period while you build a house.
Right.
Where we're having the waivers is on mobile, RVs.
Yeah, well,
That's where so
we
we've
changed
done,
it though,
we
didn't we?
did,
Yeah.
we changed that. So are you saying that you want to revert to where you don't allow?
no, they may be allowed, but it needs to come as a waiver, that way we can check it out. And they used to take a actual, like a road, Google Earth view, and you could go, oh, there's trailers all around here. Sure, let them put one. But unless there's a simpler way that it doesn't have to come to the council, because we've been trying to take all the planning stuff and send it where it needs to be.
So let me play devil's advocate for
Okay,
a minute.
that's why I asked you.
Okay, you have people that buy mobile homes and then they come place it.
Mm-hmm.
Say y'all just finished a council meeting, well, then they may 3 weeks before they can get the approved address.
That's one of the reasons we made the
Correct.
list,
So
yeah.
maybe if we're able to tell that a mobile home has been there already, that subdivision, then it would be no sense in having to come back here to wait to be on.
Was that
a
something y'all
waiver.
can work on to figure out and then tell
Could
us
do it
what you want and we'll
administratively.
bless it?
do it administratively.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, just make it where we have to be able to show proof that there is has been a mobile home permitted, or through Google Earth or the assessor's
Right,
office,
right.
where a mobile home is already there in that
Well,
subdivision.
the problem is that one may have been a hardship at some time, and they just never brought it back out.
Well,
Yeah.
planning would have record of that.
They
So
would.
we can make
So you could check it and make sure.
stipulations, no hardship on a temporary basis, and make sure that mobile homes were already permitted in that subdivision.
For y'all to go by.
Correct.
I think that's a good idea.
And if you wanna do like a verbal or something, let y'all, but it makes it where, one, it don't have to come for a waiver, and two, the customer
They don't have to wait so
2 or
long.
3
I understand
weeks
that, yeah, because
for-
once they get it delivered, they want the electric on so they can move in. And I
See,
get that.
sometimes they may need an address before they
Okay.
can sign or
Right.
close, well, we can't do it.
I'm really not quite following you, but I'm not quite following what everybody's trying to say here, but Gary's got something he would like to say.
There's one other thing before Gary, give me just 1 second. What did he saying though? Even though they do it that way, if we do it that way, we still got to have a document sent to us so we know that what it is in case someone asks us. In other words, if you're gonna put a trailer in there and you determine whether Sam or whoever makes that determination says, yeah, they've been having trailers in this name subdivision for 5 years. Okay, if you do that, and we got someone, a constituent calls Randy or calls Scooter and says, how come y'all allowed a trailer in here? Well, we're not gonna know unless we get, we're not gonna know unless we got a technical. Yeah, right. Yeah, we gotta have something turn in to us so we know, have that information.
Make it hard, but we
Yeah.
want to make it where it works.
Right.
Without something accidentally getting in there.
Gary, do you have something you'd like to
Gary
say?
Talbot, Council District 2, 33460 Marion. So in the particular situation Scooter's talking about, so we had a named subdivision. That particular named subdivision, lot 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 were on state highway. And the rest of the lots were in a subdivision. Similar sometimes where subdivisions will have commercial, on a highway, around the entrance and then lots in the back. So the waiver was granted, and I'll just tell you, the waiver was granted on Amy Church Road for what people thought was a lot on Amy Church Road, not part of a subdivision. And so later on, they realized that the lot on Amy Church Road was part of the subdivision. But by that, and people have bought lots in there based on gonna put a trailer on them. So, it's, that particular thing's kind of out those horses are gone. But there are situations, I've got subdivisions in my district where phase 1 of the subdivision is a really nice subdivision. And by the time you get to phase 9, that's a different type of subdivision. You know what I'm saying? So there are times there have been subdivisions that have been built. I can go to certain areas and say, you talk about like Broadmoor and Baton Rouge. Well, Broadmoor can be really diverse from one end of Broadmoor to the other. You know what I'm talking about? And so what I'm saying is that just because you say that I want to grant a waiver in a named subdivision, you might not mean the whole subdivision. Because it could be that there's some barrier in the subdivision that's made one part of it different than another part. And I think the particular thing Scooter's talking about is what happened. That was Linda Lee. So the Linda Lee subdivision, there was a waiver granted to lot 1 of Linda Lee, which people thought was just a lot on Amy Church Road, not realizing that Linda Lee did not have a single trailer in it. But there were trailers up and down Amy Church Road that were not part of the Linda Lee subdivision. So when we looked at Amy Church Road, we said, oh yeah, there's trailers up and down the road. We're going to grant that waiver, which then, because of the way we had agreed upon and put the list, everything in Linda Lee became available for a trailer. And all Scooter's asking is that in lieu of having a blanket, we grant a waiver to a subdivision, that everything in that subdivision, he's just asking for a second look. Because what would have happened is the next time somebody wanted to put a trailer in Linda Lee, they said, wait, there's no trailers in Linda Lee. Said, oh yeah, there's one in lot 1. Well, we didn't think of lot 1 as part of being Linda Lee. We thought of lot 1 as being on Amy Church Road. You follow, that's the specific example that happened. That is the one instance that it happened, and now there are like 3 or 4 mobile homes going into Linda Lee right now based on the fact that it flooded. In lieu of rebuilding houses, people are clearing out lots and putting mobile homes in it. Completely legal. You know what I'm saying? Based on our deal, Scooter, but it wasn't what the intent was at the time the law was made. So all Scooter's asking is that in lieu of having a blanket waiver, that once a waiver has been given to a trailer in a particular name subdivision, that it's not a blanket, that it comes back before the council, so that when a mistake like happened in Linda Lee happens, it's not gonna potentially negatively impact everybody in that subdivision.
So, and we're not doing that now? I thought that's how we did it.
No, now, for example, once we give a waiver in Linda Lee, then everything in Linda Lee is available for a waiver.
I want to add to that, because I just had a similar situation happen, and you do not have to, it's my understanding from one of our legal experts that you do not have, just because you have issued a waiver in the past does not mean you have to do it again and again and again. You can deny.
But in an effort, we as a council, in an effort to not hear the same type of waiver over and over again, we established a policy that said, once we granted a waiver for a trailer in a named subdivision that was originally designed for stick-built houses, then you could continue to do that. And so in an effort to streamline the meetings and make it easier for people, because now if I live in Linda Lee and I want to put a trailer in there, I've torn my house down, I just go get a permit and it's on the list. But because the horses are out the barn, but if we'd have let a second look at that, when the second trailer came to Linda Lee subdivision, we'd have identified that there are no other trailers in there except that one trailer on Amy Church Road. And so therefore we probably wouldn't have granted the waiver for the rest of the subdivision. I mean, it's just, so that's all Scooter's asking, is that we change the policy so that where we used to, once we granted a waiver, it was blanket, that we have a second look, because we have seen a particular instance where a second look would have prevented what would now three or four mobile homes in a subdivision designed for stick-built houses. That's what this is all about.
How will we get the second look? How will we get the second?
By not making it a blanket waiver. Every waiver would have to come to the council.
Mr. Chair.
Okay. I'm sorry, someone asked me.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, John.
I think we passed that law initially by ordinance that said you couldn't put trailers into a subdivision that was designed for stick.
Right.
But if I'm not mistaken, I thought it was just by resolution that we changed that policy.
Sandy,
Now, maybe it was an
Sandy,
ordinance.
did we change it by policy or we changed it by
I
ordinance?
think it was just.
We changed it by
So it
ordinance.
was by ordinance that we.
So I think we need to amend the ordinance
Then that
back
ordinance needs to be changed.
that says that every waiver would have to come before the council.
And that ordinance needs to be changed.
That's what Scooter's talking about.
Just back to the original,
Right.
what you had done, John. Yeah, that's exactly.
Can I say something?
Yeah,
It's not
so
important.
let's stay in order if possible. Thanks for all the feedback. So go ahead, Aaron. Aaron's got a question.
I just want to make the comment to clear up the confusion about this, and I sincerely mean this, Mr. Keene. Would it be possible to speak with our planner about this to help clarify this? Because I need help with it as well.
You might have a better idea than what we're looking at.
Okay.
That's fine with me, that's why we hired Meg to help us with all that stuff. So that's fine. If
You know, the
don't mind.
people at home might not be able to hear you, Scooter.
Oh, they can hear me.
Go ahead, Gary.
I think ultimately, I think all this can be fixed with zoning. If we choose to zone, if we would create a zoning class of a subdivision that didn't allow trailers at a later date. You follow what I'm talking about? We wouldn't need an ordinance. It wouldn't need a requirement. If a subdivision was zoned with
I agree with you
with
on
no
that.
trailers, so we could.
And I also think that is to come. I agree with what you're saying.
Well, I mean, I think that some of these ordinances that we have now, we're having to deal with because we don't have zoning. But I think if we create zoning that says this subdivision can never have a trailer, and we classify subdivisions with that were originally designed for stick-built houses and give them the proper classification, then this ordinance doesn't even need to be on the books anymore, because
And it won't come to
everything
us.
will be zoned. But until that happens, that's the stuff that we're going to have to deal with.
Okay, appreciate you, Gary. That was a good explanation. Anybody else want to comment on this particular ordinance modification? You got a question, Randy?
Yeah. I want to comment on, I'm agreeing with what they're saying. It just seems like here we are, a legislative group, fixing to do something administratively again. I agree with the second look, everything they're saying. I just don't understand why it has to come before us to say, okay, yeah, we done seen it, planning seen it, permitting seen it, the surveyor seen it, the people that bought it seen it, and now we seen it, 5 people. Now that's 5 steps we seen it. Look how long we have held the people back. It's my understanding at home HOAs, it's not every subdivision you can put a trailer in. Now, there are some subdivisions on HOAs, they're allowed to put trailers in. But this is one that I don't think, that we're making we may have made a mistake and we may not, I'm not sure, but we're trying to over-regulate, in my opinion. This is we made the rules, this bunch that's sitting here, all of us in here, we made the rules. And it seems like we should be able to give the rules to administration, just like the Home Rule Charter says, and let them implement the rules. I just don't know why we have to go through so many different steps. We got to go through planning, through permitting, through engineers, through Morgan, all those people. Then they come to us to make a rule, and we don't really have anything to do but say yes, vote yes or no on our personal preference.
If I could, for
You
just a
done.
second.
Go
So
ahead,
the only
Scooter, go
problem I
ahead,
see
go
is that the only people that can grant a waiver is the council, right? So we would have to make the rules show that we're taking that ability away, and I don't think administration can grant a waiver. So that's the only problem, Randy, is that if we just made it to where, for the time being, till we get our planner or whoever to tell us the right way, we get the zoning in place for those type of subdivisions, let's just go ahead and make it back to what it was originally when John designed it. It worked fine. It just was a lot of waivers, right? Well, in the next 6 months, however long it takes for them to get us in line to work the plan, it wouldn't hurt just to go back to it for time being, get our zoning done right, and then we can move forward.
But why would we do away with the waiver? Why would we do away with that?
Well, we wouldn't. We're going to have to give that waiver.
So-
It will be the second look, and then boom, and then DD will give them a permit, no problem.
It just seems complicated to me.
All right, so,
Look, I think everybody wishes that there was a way around this, and I think that's why we did it before. I think the issue is that we wrote a law that said you can't put a trailer in a named subdivision designed for stick-built homes. That was hard and fast. That was the rule we made. So the only person that can grant a waiver to a law is the legislative body that made the law. As I understand from everything I've been told in the 7.5 years we've served as council, is that only the council can waive the law that they make, that's on the books. So given that situation, there were constant situations coming to us where a subdivision that used to be for stick-built homes, then for some reason became for trailers, and they were coming to us, and we tried to shortcut it by eliminating all that stuff from the council by saying if we granted it, then you didn't have to come back. And we realized that's a mistake because it lets things get through the cracks. Because all DD and them are looking at a name on the list. They don't know that Linda Lee doesn't have any trailers in it because Linda Lee's on the list. That's all they do is look at that list. And so that was how the law got to. I think the law John came up with originally was good because it protected subdivisions after the flood. And that's still a situation that we're having issues with at times. And I understand I'd love to say administratively, and if there's a way to write the law that outlines and details everything, then I'm good with that. If there's a way to give away the ability to grant a waiver to permitting or planning or whatever, I got no issue with that. But as we have operated for the last, what's that law? That law's been on the books 6.5 years, John, something like that?
It was a while back.
I mean, we have operated under those guidelines initially that the only way you could get around the law was for us to grant a waiver. And then we created a situation that said once we granted a waiver in a named subdivision, then you didn't have to come back to us. And now we realize that's probably a mistake and we need to back up on that. So Randy, we're not trying to do anything different. And if I thought there was a way to write the law another way, we'd have probably done that 6.5 years ago. But I think John did his research and that's how we came up with the law the way it was structured at that point in time. And look, I think we all agree with you. we get 10, 12 items every meeting that should be administrative, but they're waivers to an ordinance, and they don't have the ability to do that. Not the way we've been informed, or not the way the ordinances are written.
Appreciate you, Gary.
Just one, it ain't,
Go ahead.
It ain't for you, Gary, I'm just talking out loud. You may know the answer. If there's a HOA in that subdivision, and that HOA allows mobile homes in their subdivision, how can we tell them, no, they can't have it?
We would in that particular.
You give them a waiver.
Only for subdivisions designed for stick-built homes.
It's just, look,
Well,
guys,
they're
I
gonna
think,
all-
go ahead, I didn't mean to
They're
cut you
gonna
off.
all be designed for stick-built homes at first. I mean, I'm not talking about trailer parks. Okay.
Go ahead, Mr. Ard, I was gonna,
All right, so when John wrote the ordinance, his intent was subdivisions, what we know as subdivisions nowadays. You
Correct.
got an entrance, you go in there, it's a subdivision.
Correct.
Well, when we started putting these trailers in, we started finding out, like out on these country roads, when they started subdividing land 40 years ago, they named it a subdivision, and Lot 1, Lot 2, Lot 3, Lot 4, all the way down 63. Well,
Okay.
that's a named subdivision.
Correct.
Well, they got trailers up and down there.
Correct.
So we were having to give all these waivers on what was, as it was written, a named subdivision. But that wasn't, we couldn't figure out another way to word it to mean only a subdivision, you know, what we know as a subdivision nowadays. So that's why we said, well, once a subdivision was granted a waiver to put a trailer on it, then that subdivision was grandfathered in. And they didn't ever have to come back to us.
I agree with all that.
All right, so now they're having issues with some of them being able to keep getting it, because now it's affecting what his intent was, which was to stop them from going into a development.
Okay, and I guess it's clear as mud for me, okay, guys, and I'm gonna get out the way. I'm gonna get out the
I
way,
know.
because it's clear as
Yeah.
mud to me.
But if we would never ran into the subdivisions just on the side of a road that just is named a subdivision, that we would probably still just have it the way John wrote it, and we would have never changed anything.
I just wouldn't see why we gotta give them a waiver, is my point. To me, that's the homeowners association, whether they could say they can have a trailer or not. And I don't understand why we into the homeowners
Some of them
association.
don't have homeowners associations.
Those, but then that would be differently.
Right.
That would be differently. But most everyone that I've seen does have a homeowners association. It just seems we're making the process longer, and not for just the developer, for the mom and pop, someone who's got to move into school tomorrow, someone who lost a job or trailer or whatever. Those things, that's when we provide services to the people that has already paid for it. They're looking for us to find them a way that is cut shorter, that they don't have to come to 3 different meetings or 4 different meetings. And maybe won't like that person and won't give them a waiver. Then they're mad at me or whatever. It should be cut and dry. We should make the laws where if it is a waiver required for this exception, there's no reason if Sam or whoever our third-party engineers looked and went out there. We don't never hardly ever go out there. Now, if it's in your district, I know you go. If it's in Scooter's district, he goes. If it's in Shane, he goes. So then we have to take out, the other 8 councilmen have to take that councilman's word. Why we can't take Sam's word? Why we can't
Then we
take...
just need to make it say that it requires the permitting of planning versus a waiver.
Okay. I could see a little more on that.
See
Go
what I'm
that
saying?
way.
And permitting just needs, planning needs to be able to approve it versus a
Yeah.
waiver approval.
It just-
'Cause that's what we did. We did a waiver because after the flood, everybody was just wanting to tear the house down and put a trailer in there.
let me,
This week I got 8 waivers, okay? So I got to go look at 8 waivers, and they got an office full of people over there that could go do that. They could go do that.
Well, you hear, Randy, I promise
So I
you.
just don't want to keep making laws that makes a legislator
But I think that's the
administrative.
problem, is right now it's written that they need a waiver to be able to do it. So maybe if we just pull
Maybe
out
that's-
needing a waiver,
that's
and
my
you need
point.
permission from planning to be able to do it.
That's what I would like to see, Jeff. What you just said is what I would like to see.
The way we,
go ahead, John.
unless you want to go change
No,
the
no,
subject.
go ahead.
I think where we made our mistake is when we passed the ordinance, not allowing mobile homes in stick-built, subdivisions designed for stick-built. Well, we were doing waivers, but then there was, like I said, if you did a specific subdivision where there was trailers everywhere, and when we passed that ordinance that said we could do it if you've already put one, then it would be then that subdivision would go on the list. I think that's where we made our mistake. The list, there should be a list, so Didi and them can look at it. But that list, she automatically put it on. If we gave a waiver, we might not have intended to give it a waiver for that entire subdivision. And so we should vote as a council what subdivisions we want on that list or which ones we do not want on that list. And then all she's got to do is just look at that. They don't have to come to us anymore. So, I mean, if you just pick the subdivisions, okay, if it comes up, say, no, I don't add one to this, don't add it to that list or create the list. So I think that's probably the way around it. We'd have to sit down and write an ordinance for that. So maybe we could maybe get with our planning professional on that and help us write an ordinance for that. So
I don't want to shoot down anybody's idea, but my thought there is that the list that John's referring to was supposed to be developed by granting a waiver the first time, and then once the trailer was in there,
Correct.
then letting the permitting department
but
move
that's the
forward.
problem, though.
But I think that possibly
The list
we
should-
may have set ourselves up for failure because sometimes it's extremely difficult to decide whether or not a trailer, had a waiver in the past and it was okay for this subdivision to be on that list, right? And also, going back to John's idea, to create the list of all the subdivisions in Livingston Parish where it's acceptable to have trailers and not, that seems like a ton of extra work to me. I mean, so to me, it's to try to wrap this up, basically, I think you're going to need to decide if you want to continue going like we're going, if we really have a real problem to address, if you're okay with, if you don't think we have a problem and this was just a one-off, then we just continue like we're going, or if you think that it's better to take a second look and go ahead and wait that extra 2 to 4 weeks, to really confirm that it's okay to put the trailer in there, then we could vote to remove that section of the ordinance out. So I think that's what we need to think about over the next couple of days. I think Scooter's going to probably introduce this at the next council meeting, and we can just kind of think about whether or not we want to continue going like we're going, if we think that process is acceptable, to kind of let administrative team, make the decision based on past information and maybe looking at Google Maps and things like that, looking at a list that, or you say, I want to make sure that we don't set them up and that there's no possible way that, they could make a mistake in the future. So I think that's kind of where we're at. I think it's a good ordinance, because I think it protects property values. But on the other hand, it seems kind of complicated, and you might not always be able to get it 100% correct. Go ahead. Randy wants to ask one more
Scooter,
question.
one more question. When you do the ordinance, redo it, or whatever you got to do, is it worthwhile visiting the same thing with homes, not just mobile homes, but residential homes? Say something is I used the definition R2. I think that's what I got coming in, a bunch of them. So R2, some of the homes on those R2 lots is 2 homes to a lot, some of them's 3 homes to a lot, some's 4 homes to a lot. As long as it's R2, right now, if they want to divide that property and it's zoned correctly, they still got to come get a waiver from us. Is that correct?
I don't think so. That would just be a subdivision of property, right, Shane?
So,
Wait, they're-
okay, so
they're not-
let's go back to, okay, if you're going to design, if you're going to subdivide within a subdivision that
If you're
was,
doing it in a subdivision.
with or without improvements, then there's an ordinance that says you can't do that.
Can't
So you
do
got to
that.
come back for a waiver on that division
So
of
what I'm
property.
asking, if we're going to do a waiver to catch the mobile homes,
Yeah,
is
should
it
we?
do the homes too at the same time? Or?
I think that's a whole different deal, though. 'cause
Yeah, I think that's a
gonna
separate
be what our
situation.
zoning can fix that.
Yeah.
And I don't think that should be allowed, period.
Well, even,
Let me ask you this.
Well, even
I got an
zoning,
idea.
you won't be able to put a mobile home if
What
it's
if you
not
did
zoned
this?
that way.
Right, right.
What if you did this? What if we added, you had to have a letter of no objection by the surrounding adjacent property owners? Would that be okay?
No,
or
because
you're
what's
not
gonna
okay with
happen, the
that?
guy 4 houses down, so the people
Right.
in Linda Lee
Yeah,
were screaming mad.
yeah,
And I'm like, how'd this happen?
right.
I wanted to call Dee Dee and get on Dee Dee. Dee Dee goes, wait. It was on the list. And I'm like, okay. So it wasn't Dee Dee's fault. It was my fault. Because I looked at it and went, well, there's trailers all down A-Meet Church Road. Of course you can put a trailer. And they put a big fine double wide with decks around it, you know. It's nice. But one road back, there was nothing but these nice little brick homes.
But seemed like
Built in the
that's,
60s, I would say.
Let me ask you
but
this.
in that situation, why couldn't Natalie just pull it and say, well, look, this is not part of it? She couldn't do that?
Well, it might be
We
difficult
didn't even look.
sometimes.
The ordinance said if you grant a waiver illegally on the first one.
Oh, didn't look.
And it goes in the book and they all
So
good.
what we're trying to do is undo that portion of it temporarily. Just undo that portion. Then when we get our ordinance, when we get our zoning fixed, that should be addressed.
Yeah, and then it wouldn't be a big deal. It's not something we don't have to do this Thursday. This has been a year and a half
You wanna
ago
wait?
when this happened.
What are you saying here, Scooter? You want to wait?
Yeah, let's wait, but we need to
Okay.
get a plan and decide what we want to do. You know, you're the ordinance guys. I think the easiest fix is just to go back what it originally said and let them ask for a waiver. It's not gonna turn into a problem most times for somebody waiting a week or two. Sometimes it will. Maybe we can make an exception for somebody. We could even make it where the DD would contact the council person whose district it is, but I can't give a waiver without you guys, you know?
I'm just throwing this out there. Is it feasible to write it where they give the waivers? So
Not the waiver, no, we can make it where it doesn't require a waiver. It would just be that.
I just see 2 weeks of
Shane,
helping.
maybe y'all can come up with something, Aaron, that it wouldn't need a waiver. It would just say, if you come to planning with this, they would just look and check.
That's
I
what
think
I'm
that
thinking.
this is all part of the
big plan.
good things that we have to come, and it really needs to be worked out. I think we all agree that it needs work. I would really like to have expert eyes on this to help us with it.
Yeah, because we're normal folks. That's what people think we way up here. We just working people, you know?
Scooter, thank
But
you.
yeah, put it off.
Thanks, Scooter.
Let's see what we can do with the planner. We'll pass by Villavasso and say, what do you think of this? Oh, man, that ain't gonna work. You know, he'll tell us.
Scooter, thank you for bringing
Appreciate that. Appreciate that, Scooter. Anybody else want to talk about this? Moving on. Next agenda item, let's see. Oh, this is modifications to the policy and procedure manual. Right? Yeah, this is agenda item 3B. Okay. Modifications to the policy and procedure manual. Okay, guys, so let's talk about this. Just kind of want to clarify some things. It looks like we made some changes to our policy and procedure manual that basically said that no ordinances shall be placed on the agenda through any committee unless it's properly introduced. I think what they meant there was that, you know, no ordinances shall be placed on the agenda without going through the ordinance committee. And that really simply shouldn't be. If a councilman wants to put a agenda item on the council agenda to introduce or, you know, an ordinance, you know, we try to go through the ordinance committee, but it's not a real requirement. So we want to make that modification just to make sure it's clarified that, you know, if you want to put an ordinance to be introduced on the council agenda, you have that right to do so. And we wanted to make sure that our policy and procedure manual didn't conflict with that, okay? So that would be a change that we make. And then we also had modified this policy and procedure manual to say there will be no addendums to the agenda once the agenda has been published. We're publishing our agendas the Thursday before the council meeting. And I think we've come to learn that, you know, in certain cases that we do need to make addendums, right? And we've actually done it. And so what we're trying to do is clarify, not really clarify, but adhere to our policy and procedure manual by modifying the policy and procedure manual that allows us to put addendums when we need to. And so, you know, I think we're going to need like a resolution from the council. I don't think we're going to need an actual ordinance, but that's basically, it's going to be, it actually is on the council agenda for this coming Thursday, and we're going to talk about that and vote on that. And if you agree with it, the way we're currently operating, we're going to do that. In addition to that, we want to clarify that special meetings, like if the a special meeting is called or held, that you need 24 hours notification. That's just basically, I think, straight out of the Home Rule Charter, to the best of my knowledge. And let's just say regular council meeting agendas, you got to have that 48 hours in advance, right? You got to publish that or post that 48 hours in advance, right? And we're doing that by posting it the Thursday before, so we're following that, but we just want to make sure that the policy and procedure manual, reflects, fair and accurate practices. So that's basically what that agenda item is about. So anybody got any questions on this, or does anybody have any comments on this? Come on up.
I'm glad you said it had been enacted, because I thought it was a few months ago, but yet I kept seeing addendums come up.
Right.
So I would like y'all's addendum window to be very, very narrow, because I think everybody agreed it's great for the citizens, it's good for you guys. Y'all have a job. Y'all need a few days to look at something. So the 2 days before, I mean, it almost happened right now. Scooter, we'll discuss it Thursday. Come on now. It's a very narrow window for what can be added. Just put it out there, because I like it. I think everybody likes the week morning, probably y'all too, where y'all can research the ordinances.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate you very much. Anybody else? Okay, I don't think we need a vote or anything. I just wanted to explain what that modification was going to be to the policy and procedure manual, and let everybody know what we're planning to address this coming Thursday when it comes to changes to the policy and procedure manual. Okay, the next agenda item is the 12-month moratorium, right? And so we had a meeting last Thursday when did we have? We had a meeting a week ago.
Tuesday.
Okay, last Tuesday. No, last Monday, that's right.
Monday.
It was last Monday. I think it was 8 days ago. And so during that meeting, we talked about a lot. We got a lot of feedback. We said we were going to go try to make some modifications. And so we did that. And we also promised that we were going to have another meeting today to review some of those modifications. And this was already introduced at the last council meeting, and this would be possibly adopted, if the council so chooses, this coming Thursday. All right. So what we kind of wanted to do was, to the best of my ability, kind of go over some of those modifications that were made, and then after we kind of do that, we'll skim over that quickly. We'll allow for public feedback, to see if more modifications need to be made. All right. So in the beginning, this ordinance basically talked about before, it had review and approval, right, of preliminary plats, right? And there were some questions about that. And so we went back and we made some changes, and we took that review and approval out, right? So basically, what this moratorium is going to say, what it now says is an ordinance to adopt a 12-month moratorium prohibiting the submittal of any and all preliminary plats, site plans, and/or construction drawings for subdivisions with improvements and subdivisions without improvements where the property is being subdivided or re-subdivided into more than 50 lots or more than 100 acres. So this is about submittals, right, and prohibiting submittals, and site plans and/or construction drawings for subdivisions with improvements and subdivisions without improvements. There's more language in here. I think it'll be important to you. I think I should probably go ahead and review it, and then we can pick it apart, thereafter. Let's go to the third whereas. Whereas in order to maintain stability, it is necessary to maintain low density while subdivision and zoning regulations are reviewed, improved, and adopted, right? So fourth whereas statements basically says this moratorium will not affect the issuance of building permits for constructing residential structures, buildings, and/or sheds. So there was confusion about the permits and what type of permits. So we made some modifications there to make it clear what type of permits we were talking about. So basically, it says building permits for constructing residential structures, buildings, and/or sheds. So this moratorium would not prohibit, my interpretation of the way this is written, this would not prohibit, if you were trying to get a building permit, this moratorium doesn't apply, period, okay? To build a residential structure, period, okay? Whereas this moratorium will not affect subdivisions with improvements and subdivisions without improvements in which public officials have signed and approved the construction plans. Okay, there was some question, a lady had already started construction on her subdivision, right? And she was concerned that this moratorium would prevent her from being able to move forward, you know, and her construction plans, I think, had already been approved and signed, and so we communicated in that meeting that that was not what this moratorium was about. If your construction plans had already been approved, you know, this moratorium would not apply, okay? So we tried to do the best we could to clarify that. So now it reads, this moratorium will not affect subdivisions with and without improvements and subdivisions without in which public officials have signed and approved the construction plans, right? The next whereas statement basically says this moratorium shall not affect property being developed for non-residential uses. We wanted to make sure that it was extremely clear to everyone that this is not a moratorium on commercial development in any way, shape, or form, okay? This moratorium shall not affect the issuance of permits for non-residential uses, okay? Just more clarification. This doesn't affect building permits on developments that are, you know, commercial. Okay. Well, let's go through the be it ordained, make sure we kind of, I don't know, the intent is there, you know, and that we agree on the interpretation of the moratorium, okay? So be it ordained, this moratorium will not affect the issuance of building permits for constructing residential structures, buildings, and or sheds, right? This is just kind of repeating some of the whereas statements, but basically this moratorium will not affect subdivisions with improvements and subdivisions without improvements in which public officials have signed and approved the construction plans. Be it further ordained that this moratorium shall not apply to property being developed for non-residential uses, and be it further ordained this moratorium shall not affect the issuance of permits for non-residential uses. And then in addition to that, we wanted to make sure that it was clear as a bell that this moratorium shall not apply to residential divisions of property of 50 lots or less than 100 acres. Okay?
Where is that at?
That is, it's the third, be it further ordained from the bottom. Do you have a copy of the newest? What about everybody? We wanted everybody to have a copy, if at all possible. So, if we need more, we can take a little time out and maybe pass them around.
30 copies.
And we can give you, you know, a couple of minutes to reread it, too. So you might want to take your time and read it. But I mean, we're going to continue with the meeting and letting people talk. If you got something to say now, if you got a little feedback, you want to come up to the podium while others are reading, you're welcome to. We can just pause for a few more minutes if nobody else has anything. Gary, you ready?
I'm ready.
Come on up.
Okay, so in our district, Gary Talbot, Council District 2, 33460 Marion Drive, Denham Springs. We, when we talked about this the other night, you said this was about submittals.
Yes, sir.
So once the planning commission grants a preliminary site plan, which is a submittal, and a drainage impact study done, the traffic studies done, and all the other studies are done that are required, and they submit construction plans, according to this ordinance, they can't approve those construction plans?
Basically, what it's saying,
It says,
construction-
it says, be it ordained as follows, that there is hereby enacted a moratorium to adopt a 12-month moratorium prohibiting the submittal of any and all preliminary plats, which I'm good with that. I mean, but I disagree with the number of lots and everything. I got no issue if y'all want to do a preliminary plat moratorium. I do have a problem with site plans. I do have a problem with and/or construction drawings for subdivisions with or without improvements, because the initial stage of this that gets this whole thing started is the submittal of a preliminary plat. And once that preliminary plat has been submitted to planning and the advertising's been done and planning says that the preliminary plat meets our ordinances, then at that point in time, all the studies are done. When the studies are done, those people have a vested interest. Once they've started spending money on that development, then you're going to come in and say, okay, everything's ready, but I'm not going to accept your construction plans anymore. I mean, I think if you want to put a moratorium against submittals so that planning doesn't hear any more submittals for a 12-month period, I think that you're going to have a problem at the 50 and 100 and leaving commercial out of it that I think will be challenged in court, and I don't think you'll win. But I don't think you got a leg to stand on when you say that we've already told people that they can move forward with their studies, because we basically said if you meet all our ordinances, if you know we've done the drainage impact study and we've done all this stuff and we're not asking you to come back and make another submittal, you're saying under this moratorium they can't sign this thing. And based on what you told us the other night, this was about submittals only. And now you're saying that after the fact, we're gonna tell you after you've hired an engineer and done a preliminary plat and laid out a subdivision and gone to planning, put the signs up, done the advertising, had the hearing, and got preliminary approval to move forward, that after you do all the things you're supposed to do, we're still not going to sign your construction plans, even if you meet every letter of our law. I don't think that'll pass judicial review. Just like I don't think you can restrict it from commercial, just like I don't think you can restrict it at 50 and 100, because we've shown you instances where commercial developments created problems for people in the community. That's all I got to say.
Thanks, Gary. Anybody else?
Sarah Ferris, 19241 Plantation Trace. It should be pretty easy to figure out what will and won't hold up in court, considering West Feliciana has had a moratorium, Iberville's had a moratorium, Ascension has had a moratorium. At this point, I think anything that can be challenged likely has been challenged, so it seems like some good legal counsel could advise us there. I don't see multifamily in here. Are we still not going to include multifamily developments, or did I miss it in there?
It's not in there. We were focusing on subdivisions with and without improvements over 50 lots for this specific moratorium. We considered multifamily development, and if the team wants to move forward with a moratorium on multifamily development, we could make that a separate moratorium at a later date.
Okay. The other thing, I think I mentioned it at the ordinance meeting week before last, but if you haven't read Point Prospect versus West Feliciana, now would be a good time to do that. Because I think what you're trying to do will hold up in court. It's my layperson's opinion, for whatever that's worth, but some good reading material there. That's all I have.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thanks, Sarah. Go ahead, Billy.
Taylor with Macklin Taylor. I guess I just want to ask for clarification, because that was said several times in last week's meeting that the intent, the total intent was for submittals, and once you got past that first stage, after that, we weren't talking about that. So did that change from last week?
No, it's still about submittals, but the thought process there is, you know, submittals, the whole process of, you know, resubmitting. If somebody has to, say the ordinance says you have to resubmit, you know, and you got to come back and you have to submit a new preliminary plat, then, you know, the moratorium would affect that.
So if we've gotten past the stage 1 approval,
And you don't have to submit again, then
okay,
to
well,
the best of my knowledge, you can continue.
I think the way it's written is contradicting itself, because a simple thing to put in there would just say this moratorium shall not apply to any project that has received stage 1 approval. And that goes in, you know, that's in direct line with what was said last meeting. But in this case, if you get stage 1 approval, you do your studies, don't make any resubmittals, it may take me a year to do a drainage study or to get a permit. When I get to that point to submit the construction drawings, it doesn't say resubmittal of construction drawings, it just says construction drawings. So we've got the approval that we talked about last week getting, moving forward all the other processes, but this changes that.
Yeah, we're gonna, I took some notes on what Gary said. That wasn't the intent here. We were just trying to clarify.
Yeah, I know it was a lot of changes, a lot of discussions.
We're gonna take another look at that.
Okay. But just, I guess if that's truly the intent, and that's what we talked about, and that's what the intent is, adding that one sentence, I think would clarify a lot of things. If you just said, this moratorium should not apply to any project that has received stage 1 approval. And then when you get to the resubmittal part, if you resubmit it, well, then you get kicked back. So anyway,
Say that again about the kickback?
Well, if you resubmit something, I think y'all are saying, well, then we can't resubmit anything. So if I had a reason to resubmit a plat, then we wouldn't be able to do that. But if we did everything according to our original approval and move forward, we wouldn't have to resubmit.
I think you should be able to resubmit anyway, as long as this is an improvement of the project.
I agree with that too. But anyway, I just, like I said, what this says isn't what we talked about, and I think it would hold up submittal. It would cause a lot of people to do a whole lot of work, and then down the line, they wouldn't be able to submit their construction drawings the way it's written. So I'd like y'all to take a look at that.
Let me ask you a question. This is for everybody, basically, but it'd be good to get some feedback from you. So if we strike the word and/or construction drawings, how do you feel about that if that happens?
I think that's getting more in line than what we talked about. And I'm not an attorney, don't try to.
No. What are you going to consider, what would somebody in your position consider a site plan?
So I think if it's just layman's terms and our terminology, if I'm dealing with the subdivision of property, I call it a plat. If it's commercial, I call it a site plan, or multifamily, anything that's not division of property. So that's just my terminology, and with most of the ordinances written, that's kind of the way it goes.
Is there any other developer that would agree with that assumption there, that preliminary plats are basically for subdivisions and that site plans are typically for multifamily development and commercial? Anybody? Lee? Okay, so what if we said the submittal of any and all preliminary plats for subdivisions with improvements? Would you agree that that meant the intent of what was communicated in the last meeting?
Yes, I do.
Anybody else want to comment on that?
Thank y'all. Thank you, Shane. And just again, I was going to say I'm not a lawyer, and they got a lot of whereases and ordains and stuff, but just that one sentence I've mentioned 2-3 times, if that would just make it very simple for all simple people to read without having to be a lawyer, that would probably help everybody out.
Billy made a comment earlier that I thought narrowed down and got more specific when you used the word stage 1
Yes, sir.
approval.
That's the statement I'm talking about.
That's the very first time you come to the council and to the planning commission and you provision.
Now, the problem with that, in my opinion, and we can talk more about this, is that, help me out here, Billy, if you had submitted, right, but then, I don't know, there was a lot of things that changed and you needed to, I'm calling it resubmit, but submit again, right?
It's still not
To
approved.
me, if it had passed phase one or the first preliminary plat approval, you know, then if you word it the way you said, then you wouldn't be captured on the resubmittal, right? So to me, the intent here, and I think what was communicated in the last meeting is this is about submittals, right? And it's about submittals of more than 50 lots or more than 100 acres, right? And so if you've submitted and you're following along in the process and you're working your plan and you are not required to submit again, then you're good to go. That was the intent. I'm gonna get you, Gary. And to me, if we change it and modify it the way that you had communicated just now, then, you know, if you're in the part where you have to, you know, your studies, and your study basically said that you're gonna have to make some major changes, right? And you have to go back and you have to submit again, well, then this moratorium's gonna apply. So that's why I'm a little cautious about wording it exactly the way you did. But I did try to compromise by deleting the words site plans and/or construction drawings so that it would meet the original intent of saying, hey, this is about submittals. And if you don't have to, if the law doesn't require you to submit again, you're good to go, right? So would you agree that now that is clearer, that intent is clearer?
It is talking with me and you in a discussion forum.
Yeah.
But when you start reading a lot of that, sometimes
Right.
it gets a little clear as mud.
Right.
So as Mr. Randy says, so if we could maybe have that in there and then maybe add another sentence about resubmittals. I think originally you might have had the word resubmittal.
Well, I
I
had
just
it in
wanted
there,
to be
but
clear
it
because what
they asked
happens
me to
for
take
me
it
is
out.
my phone rings all day, 50 people calling, and like I told you last meeting, we could say that the wall's brown, and 50 different people have 50 different opinions on that. So
Yeah.
if it's the clearer it is, it makes it easy for us and also for planning department and for everybody involved. So that's all I'm asking, just to make it very clear.
Okay, thanks.
And-
Let me ask you this. Go
One
ahead,
thing
Ray.
on
Go
submittal
ahead.
too, you said then if you didn't have to submit again, but what if he wanted to submit to improve the project, to make it better?
If you submit, this prohibits the submittal. Okay?
Yes.
That's what this is. That's what it does.
So I personally, I don't agree with that, but if, I'm just trying to take the wording that we talked about last time
Right.
and put it clear here and see if that's what y'all's intent is. I want it to be clear, but yeah, I mean, I think if, for me, I think I'd maybe even requested to maybe put it back on the ordinance committee agenda to just discuss resubmittals and discuss minor changes, because if you move
We are.
one
We're-
lot line 5 feet, I mean, and we got to start all over.
Those changes are coming. That's
Yeah.
part of, those modifications are coming while
To
this,
get back to
this
that point, I
moratorium's
think
in
it would be
place.
great. It's just, I think we got hung up on a couple projects and kind of changed some stuff. But I think if we get back to looking at everything, how it affects every piece of property, that's probably not something that's makes a whole lot of common sense. I say if you move something 5 feet, just completely start over. So,
Yeah. Gary, did you have something you wanted to add?
thank you.
Thank you, Billy. I appreciate you.
I think Billy's wording of going to the original, submittal, as it was called, is the way to do. I really think the root of the issue lies in 125. And we've discussed it before, and I think that any changes that come back to the council that don't require an increase in the number of lots should not be considered a resubmittal.
I agree.
I think and let's not forget why that was put in, because if you remember back in the day, we would approve a plat and there would be this green space over here. And next thing you knew, that thing went from 125 lots to 135 lots, and it was less than the increase of the percentage that triggered a review again, and we lost green space from what was originally improved. So I think given the fact that the drainage improvements have required bigger retention ponds and some other things, and the fact that we're having to design the internal with a different, a 25-year flood design, which is probably requiring twice as many inlets and bigger pipe to move the water off the streets, that probably what we ought to look at is going to 125 and saying, as long as I resubmit and I don't ask for more lots, I don't have to go back to step one. If I'm 100 lots and I resubmit at 99, I shouldn't have to start over. I should be able to do that with the engineering department and the planning department. If I go to 101 lots, then my ass got to go back to the
Let me
beginning
help you
and
out
start
there,
over
don't
again.
walk away.
Huh?
So I said, let me help you out there, don't walk away. So, you know, a lot of those things you're communicating, I mean, I also would agree with some of that. The plan is to put the moratorium in place and then make some of those modifications while the moratorium's in place. And we want to work with the professional to come up with some of that language so that it best benefits, you know, the growth in Livingston Parish and the people of Livingston Parish and all that kind of stuff. So
I just think this is I mean, I don't know, go ahead, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt.
no, I'm just saying, I mean, you know, coming up with those modifications, I mean, like today, you know, had a meeting with Villavaso and you're going to see a lot of modifications to 125. I mean, it's possible that 125, you know, gets rescinded and we adopt a whole new 125 that really works well for everybody, right? And so, you know, some of those things I say we, you know, the group is going to really take that to heart and possibly make some of those changes in the future as soon as we can get that in place. You know, what I hate to do is go try to come up with these changes myself, as we've done in the past, you know, and then have to modify it again and again. I think working with the planning professional over the next, you know, 6, 12 months, possibly 24 months, you know, that we can come up with some of that language that you're talking about and really get it right. You know, I really, really believe that.
Yeah.
So I want to say this too, before I forget, and this is not specific to that. You know, it was communicated in the last meeting that we needed to have a plan, right? We needed to have a timeline, an outline of what we were trying to accomplish with the scope and everything. I want you to know that immediately, I'm not saying it was you, I'm just saying let's all talk team here. Immediately after that, you know, we contacted Mr. Villavaso, and he is working on that. And I communicated that today. I was trying to have that for this meeting, okay? And they're going to have that, to the best of my knowledge, within a week or so. And we're going to have the timeline, and we're going to have the scope and all that good stuff, and what we're trying to accomplish, and all that outlined. And what I can also tell you, you know, things change, right? But that, you know, he's thinking this is a 10 to 24 month deal, right? But we could possibly make some of those modifications that you're referring to faster than that, and kind of adopt some of these changes in phases to make it, you know, better. And it's possible that this moratorium gets lifted, you know, I don't know, January 2024. You know what I mean? Depending on how fast we can get those modifications. I'm gonna go ahead and tell you that a part of that same game plan, and this is not a Shane thing. This is if the council so-called in administration agrees to this. But we're gonna put together an advisory board, right? And the advisory board would be made up of about 3 to 4 councilmen and 3 to 4 planning commissioners and a couple of administrative people, you know, and then maybe a couple of master plan people. And we put that board together and we meet with Mr. Villavaso and his team monthly, right? And we're reviewing the changes and we're communicating the needs and all this good stuff, and they're planning and thinking and helping us get all this done correctly. And then in addition to that, I can't commit to when, but, you know, a lot of people wanted to know when we were gonna bring the public in, you know, and meet with the planning professionals and all this kind of stuff. I want you to know that that's coming. We're gonna put the advisory board together, and we're gonna start these monthly meetings with our planning professionals, and then we're gonna have some public meetings, you know, and some presentations set up, and we're gonna talk to everybody that wants to listen and provide input, you know, to kind of communicate the plan and the changes and the needs and all that kind of stuff. I think it would be great to have some of our, you know, our developers come to those meetings and kind of communicate what they feel is best for 125 and Livingston Parish and all that kind of stuff. You know, I think it would be good for the citizens to come and express their concerns and all that good stuff. So I just want everybody to know that this is all part of a bright future for Livingston Parish. And so we don't really want to cheat anybody out of anything. We're just really trying to set ourselves up for success with something like this. So I didn't mean to cut you off or anything like that, or get off on a different subject than what you was trying to communicate. But just know that some of those changes that you're referring to are needed. I agree, and we're going to work on that together. Go, Randy.
I understand that the majority is going to rule, and we all got to work on it together as a majority. Yeah. My position on this, guys, we're a little bit ahead of the court. I believe the things that has to happen has to be led by the professional planner at this meeting that we're at today. The first thing we should be discussing is the spreadsheet. How long is this going to take? We keep throwing out there a year, 10 months, 6 months, 4 months. I want to look at the sheet to see how long it's going to take. Let's look at the sheet first. Let's see what is required. We think we know what's required. Last meeting we talked 2 hours. This meeting we're going to talk another 2 hours. Next meeting will be another 3 hours. I feel confident there's not enough votes to adopt a ordinance, a moratorium. And the reason is because we all are not sure on what's required. Until that guy gets up here, gives us all a speech with everybody in here, he's got his plan laid out, because that's the plan we're going to adopt. We can't adopt a plan that we're making. It's got to be his. And those are the people that got to tell us and convince us of what we have to do. All 9 people in here want to help Livingston Parish, because that's what we got elected for to do. But we got to get the guys to do this, and not me tell you my side, Aaron tell you her side, John tell you his side, Frog tell you his side. It's got to be the guy that brings us together that we hired. And it says, okay, it may take 6 months, it may take 8 months, but when he shows us the plan on how long it's going to take and what steps has to happen, there may be some things that we can tell him that he can shorten it up, or we have already done some of those things. So I just think we're ahead when we start talking about moratorium. I just don't feel like I personally am ready for a moratorium at this time.
You got anything to say about that?
No, that's it. I think that, you know, I mean, look, if the council wants a moratorium, then the majority is going to rule. But I do believe that the timeline is important. So I would, if Mr. Villavasa is not going to have a timeline Thursday, then I think the council probably ought to push on this deal till we at least get the timeline, and then tie the timeline to the moratorium. If they want to do a moratorium based on timeline, then tie the plan, identify everything you want to fix, and tie it to the moratorium.
I hear what you're saying. Can I ask you a question?
Mm-hmm.
I think we're going to agree that there needs major changes to 125. I think we're going to agree that right now it's not really fair to the Planning Commission. It's not really fair to the developers, and it's definitely not fair to the people in Livingston Parish the way it's currently written. And I think that if somebody walks in next week and makes a submittal because we don't approve this moratorium, or maybe a week after this moratorium goes into effect, then you just hurt all 3 of those people. Because to me, Gary, you're just delaying the process, and you're compiling the problem and making it worse.
Well,
you know for a fact, and I'm not going to try to cut you off, I want you to communicate, I want to work with you, but you know for a fact that we have had mass chaos in the last 6 months. And you know what the problem is? It's the way these regulations are written, okay? And look, let's work together, people, with the developers and the people of Livingston Parish, the council and the planning commission, and everybody involved in this process to fix this as fast as possible. And the best thing to do is to put the moratorium in place and get started. Now look, if I'm lying to you, I mean, call him yourself tonight, okay? He communicated to me that he's going to have the timeline, the scope, and everything within a week or two, okay?
That's when we should start.
He also said that a moratorium is an extremely great tool for local governments to use while they're making, I'm gonna call it extreme modifications to the development and zoning ordinances in Livingston Parish, okay? And it's really, I know some people are having a hard time believing this, but it's really to protect the people and the developers and the planning commission and everybody else involved in this complex, process to develop Livingston Parish in the future. So, I mean, okay, so calmly explain to me, you believe that there really are some major problems and you believe that there really are some major enhancements that need to be made, right? Why do you want to delay it?
I think the biggest problem with 125 goes back to 125 was almost done, and then we changed the approval process at the end. I think 125 was amended and written in such a manner that it went before the council and that was it. I mean, that was the process. 125 went to planning, came to us, and that was the end of it. Then everything was done between the engineer and the developer. I mean, the parish engineer and developer. They worked it out, they signed it. I think when we asked for a second look, and it's then we don't even really get the second look because we took ourselves out of the process completely. I think part of the problems in 125 lie in the fact that we changed it at the end. So yeah, I think there's some procedural issues that need to be corrected.
Yes.
I think so far as the ordinance itself with respect to the rules, I don't know if there's that much that needs to be done. I think it's procedural issues that need to be addressed. Like, for example, there's like no grace in making a change the way it's written now. And I think that as long as you're not increasing lots, that you shouldn't have to come back and start over. That's just one. I think that's one of the biggest that I see, because there are so many things that occur that could happen. I've got a commitment from this particular water company that they're going to provide water, and then I'm right at the finish line and something falls apart, because there's a discussion on some water companies aren't all that they seem to be. You know what I'm talking about? So then that falls apart and I've got to change that. Well, is that really something that requires going through the whole process again? Or is that something that I just bring a different contract to the engineer and says, look, this is where I'm gonna get my water at now? Or, I'm planning on putting this package unit in that the health department's gonna say grace over because I'm gonna meet these standards. And then,
Well, this is what it says in our law. It don't say anything about going back.
well, all I'm saying is that, no, there's a section, Scooter, that talks about, there's a section that outlines a list of changes. And I just think that some of those things that are in there were put in because of specific issues that we thought we were trying to address. And I think that those things have come back and bit us in the butt at a later date, because really, ultimately, if we're not making more lots, then any other changes are enhancements. You follow what I'm talking about? So, look, I don't disagree that 125 needs to be modified, but I think it's procedural issues in 125 mainly that need to be addressed. And so I have no issue with the procedural issues getting addressed. I do have a concern that the moratorium as it's written right now, I'm really just concerned about it getting challenged.
Even though I made those changes
Shane, I still, look, I think that you got to identify what the scope of the work is and the timeline so that you know.
Okay.
So you
okay.
can if we're identifying the scope of what we're going to do, then we could justify maybe leaving commercial out. We could justify 50 lots and 100 acres. But until until Villavasso comes to us and gives us a timeline and gives us a scope of everything we need to address, then anything else is arbitrary. And so I think that to back up those numbers on a moratorium, you need to have the rest of the package. That's all I'm saying.
I'm with you, man.
I agree 100% with what you said.
Okay. Go ahead,
point,
Randy.
the
Go
point
ahead.
that's going on, okay, is we trying to do the right thing, okay? And we are gonna do the right thing. We just may have jumped the gun just a little bit, because if you don't have the plan, how you know what to do?
Let me
And that's
ask you this.
basically what
Let me
it
ask you
is.
this, Randy.
In talking, when we talked about the moratorium last year, when we talked about that and Chris talked to us, is you need to define what you're trying to fix. We said we're gonna try to fix 125. That's what we talked about. Wasn't that what the deal, Randy? We were working on 125 and we said we're gonna try to resolve 125. And we finally fixed 125, and maybe we rushed through 125 and made some mistakes on procedural issues because we're trying to end the moratorium. So I think what we need to do is come up, since we don't know exactly how we fix zoning, which is one of the biggest problems we have right now, because the Planning Commission feels like they don't know what their job is right now because of the zoning ordinances in flux. We know we've done some things wrong with respect to putting the zoning ordinance in place. I just think that we need to find out everything we need to fix. What do we need to fix on zoning? What do we need to fix in 125? And let's lay out, we got goal A, B, C, and D. And then the trigger's there. Once goal A, B, C, and D are resolved, then the moratorium goes away. You understand? Is
I do.
that kind of what Chris told us?
Let me comment there, okay? So, okay, I hear what you're saying. Okay, what I'm going to say is that, Gary, that can't be decided in a day and a half. That can't be decided in a week and a half. It's going to take probably 4 to 5 months, okay, to determine all the modifications that need to be made as the advisory board works with the planning department to do all of that. Now, the scope that I talked about earlier in the timeline, okay, that's going to give us some timeline as to why you think we need a 12-month or a 24-month or a 6-month moratorium, okay? That's really, really going to help us, okay, with that. But we're talking major modifications that are greatly going to impact the future development of Livingston Parish in the process of how you develop and how you get things approved and all that kind of stuff. So, my thought is what are you saying? You're going to wait a week and a half and then we're good to go and everybody's going to support the moratorium?
No.
Because that's when the scope and the timeline is going to be out.
Well, let's see what the scope and the timeline says, and let's see.
He already communicated to me today that he's going to have it in a week and a half, and that you need a 12 to 24 month moratorium. So,
well, let's have Villavasu come sit up here. He needs to email us all the timeline. He needs to email us a recommendation.
Okay.
And then let's
I don't want to argue here. I really don't.
Okay. I don't want to. But I just think, look.
But listen.
I think given the fact, if you want this moratorium to pass,
yes, sir.
I think there's some things that need to happen, and I think that needs to be tied to some scope of work. It needs to be tied to some timeline.
Now, the scope of work,
and it needs to identify all the areas that are problems, and it needs to group in that. And I think that projects that people are already vested in don't need to be part of the moratorium. And so, because of that, I think that Randy, I don't know if you agree with me or not, but that one section on 125 that talks about as long as you don't increase the number of lots, it's not a resubmittal, needs to be addressed pretty quickly.
Let's talk about that real quick. Okay, so let me talk about that real quick. Okay. You're going to agree with me that the current local law requires you that if you have any changes, you got to resubmit, right? Well, let me ask you this. Would you agree that the communication earlier in this moratorium basically is that this moratorium affects you if you have to resubmit? So to me, the way it's currently written, you're going to have people just constantly resubmitting unless we go work as a team to resubmit that. Why we want to put everybody through that and you got the planning commission,
I think
you got the council, you got half of us thinking you need to resubmit. You got half of us saying you don't need to resubmit.
Okay,
so to me, let's take time out, put the moratorium in place to protect the people, while the council and the planning commission and the professionals work to resolve all the issues that we currently have.
So what if I've got a 100-lot subdivision approved, and I can make it all work under my current guideline? But it would be better. It would be better if that 100-lot subdivision was a 95-lot subdivision, and I did a couple other things to make things better. I'm gonna meet the law with this 100-lot subdivision, but it might be better as a 95-lot subdivision. Under the current guidelines, I'm not fixing anything. If you pass this moratorium, I'm bringing you that 100-lot subdivision, get you to sign those final plans.
Okay.
Right? But whether it's better or not, that's why I'm gonna build it. Because if under the current guidelines, if I make it better and bring you a 95-lot subdivision, you're gonna make me start over, and because it's moratorium, I can't do anything.
But Gary, that's what the current law says. You see what I'm saying? The current law says you got to resubmit if you make that
I
modification.
understand what the current law says, and we all agreed the current law is flawed. You agreed that the current law is flawed, needs to be fixed.
Moratorium in place to protect the people until we can fix that flaw.
But what I'm telling you is, if I've got a set of plans that are good but can be better, why do we not want that subdivision to be the best it can be?
Gary, I'm agreeing with you.
Okay, so let's
The law is messed up.
Well, let's fix that part. We all agree that part's messed up. Let's fix it.
Okay. You want me and you to go fix it, or do you want to work with the planning professional to go fix it? And it's going to take 6 to 12 months to do it.
Let's say this, guys. Let's say this. You've done a lot of hard work. So listen to me, and just back down a little bit and listen, okay? Because you're doing it real well. Just listen for a second, okay? Everybody in here has made a good point. Everybody's made a good point. So when you're going to bring 5, 10, 15 people, I'm going to have a different idea than Aaron is going to have. John's going to have a different idea than Gary, and Gary's going to have a different idea than you. So how do we get all those things done? We have to have the professional has to run the meeting. Let me tell you what started on the Home Rule Charter. Art Theo was the professional.
Pull your mic back to you, Randy.
Art Theo was the professional. Every home charter government in the state of Louisiana, he wrote and he implemented, including the one that you're using right now. Okay, we had 9 councilmen, and we appointed each another member, so we had 18 plus him. He was the 19th person. There'd be these arguments just like what you're seeing going here. Hardly couldn't get anything done, okay? But he gave us the book. He gave us the outline. After a week of us struggling, he says, okay, gentlemen, you get your heads been beaten. Y'all made any progress? No progress was made. He said, let me show you how you work in government. He started with the spreadsheet. He said, we're going to try to get the first 10 items on the spreadsheet. He said, and we're going to work. And we worked together, and that's how we did it. He wrote it, he altered it. But what we're doing now, we're trying to guess what the planner's going to tell us we got to do. We're trying to be prepared. And look, there's some things we may argue over, whether the submittal has to come back or it doesn't have to come back. I don't think it has to come back. I think you shouldn't penalize somebody to improve a project. That's my personal opinion. But we cannot get started if we don't have the professionals in here guiding it, do it. It's a way that you do it. It's a way you get your document. It's a way that you work through things. You don't just talk and try to out-debate the next guy. It's got to work in real time. All these things they had in the town of Livingston and San Tammany Parish and Ascension Parish, they all went through these moratoriums. There's not going to be hardly a bit of difference in any of them. They all work the same. All you're going to have to do is change some of the wording to affect the parish. So this ain't nothing that we're going to have to think about. We know what has to be done, but let's don't try to figure it out, work for 2 months, 3 months, and then he finally gets here with a spreadsheet and says, no, we got to go about this completely differently. I know he gave you an outline of what has to happen, and you reciprocated that to the public, you reciprocated it to us, and you did a great job on it. And I wouldn't want to have no one here fighting for me but you, okay? I'm just saying that we might be a little bit ahead of the court, and let's wait till everything gets together, and we all can start, we have working meetings, and we can make it happen. I think everybody can get satisfied, I really can. Yes, there's a lot of stuff going there, and the people feel like a moratorium is needed, I understand that. But is a moratorium needed in the whole parish? I don't think so at this time. But I don't see the spreadsheet. I don't see what he has planned, so I'm guessing what's needed.
Shane, I think everybody wants to solve the issues. I think everybody wants to solve the issues. I think that to get a moratorium in place, that to get votes for it, in my opinion,
To get 5 votes.
that to get 5 votes, there's some things that are gonna have to say, and I think that one of them's gonna be tied to Villavasso's spreadsheet and outline of what he thinks need to be. And I think until that's done, I don't think there are gonna be 5 votes for it. That's just my opinion. So that's why I'm up here talking about that tonight.
I'm glad
So
you came.
look, that's it. I think
Go
the
ahead,
work
Eric.
that's been done's been great. I just think to get to 5 votes, it's going to be tied to an outline of what needs to be resolved and how to resolve it. And it can't negatively impact those people who have a vested interest in what they've been
So
working
basically
on.
what you're saying is if you wait 2 weeks and you get this scope in a week, that you're gonna support a 12-month moratorium?
I got no issue with the moratorium. But you know how I feel about it. I think that I want Villavasso to sit here and talk to us about why we have a number of 50 and 100 and we leave a commercial out, we leave a multifamily out. I think we need to look at the whole thing needs to be in play. And let's talk about the whole deal.
Go ahead, Aaron.
I do. I would like to know, have you met with Mr. Villavasso? Okay. Has he outlined it for you? Because I'm not getting this
He and I talked.
on the phone.
No, I went and met him. One of those days when I went to Livingston and sat in the
Either way
council
is good.
chamber at
Just tell
Livingston.
tell us your interpretation of the conversation.
My interpretation is that he thinks that he doesn't seem in my conversation with him. I thought that some of this stuff could be resolved. A line portion of this stuff could be resolved this year. I'm not saying everything's going to be resolved this year, but I think a line share of it can be resolved this year, and that was my goal to him because, look, I'm prepared if depending on what they say about our certain zoning ordinances, I'm all for putting my posters up and having a public hearing at the planning commission and having a public hearing, in the community and having a public hearing at the council chamber and letting the planning commission adopt my map. My map's been the same like from day one. I mean, my issue has been that I've felt that I know we cut some corners early on, but I thought we were all going to work into agreement because let's face it, when we passed, Sam and them at planning don't have the manpower to do this thing. I mean, we agreed to kind of do the, change the zoning on a gentleman's agreement, general person's agreement for a year. Because guess what? They don't have the manpower to send out notices to everybody, put signs up, have hearings.
Okay.
They don't have that budget. And so, look, I mean, I've rezoned property in EBR and
When
in
you
different
talk to
places where you got to
Villavasso, Gary.
post the signs.
I
and go-
wasn't finished.
Huh?
I wasn't finished, but I'm waiting
I'm
for
sorry,
you to
but-
finish.
I thought you had. I'm sorry.
No,
Go ahead.
it's so much more than just zoning. It's the zoning regulations. It's the master plan. It's impact fees, road, school, drainage. It's so much more, and he has outlined it. And so I'm not understanding when you met
because-
with him, how you met with him, and how long you've met with him. And if
probably-
you haven't, I would like to set up a meeting with
I probably
you.
hadn't spent but an hour and a half with him. I ain't spent the 20 hours y'all spent with him. I can tell you.
That was
But-
my
but-
20 hours
but-
that I did on my Saturdays.
Okay, y'all,
But my concern is that some of these things are outside of our purview. We have in the ordinance the ability for the school board to charge the impact fee, but they got to come to us. That's not our
Gary,
responsibility.
can I say something there?
Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to say this. Okay, so when I talked to Chris Moody, the legal advisor, when I talked to Villavasso, okay, about the school impact fees, and we all, I know all our hearts are with the school system, right? And
Right.
ensuring that they are the wonderful school system tomorrow that they are today. They said that the numbers, they need to work with a professional to do a better job justifying the numbers, okay? Now, we know that without the moratorium and the protection that, a gigantic subdivision comes in, right, and it overcrowds the school system and, it has a toll on the quality of education that the people get, right? So, I mean, that is part of the game plan to move forward is to work with them in phases. Do we have to have the impact fees, and how we're going to do that? Is that step one? Probably not. But what I can tell you is that while the moratorium's in place to protect everybody, that is part of the plan, is to take a look at and see if the team wants to implement the impact fees for infrastructure, for matching grants, and for the school systems and school impact fees, to work with the school board to kind of implement some of this stuff. So, we all know how I feel. That it would be good to have something like this in place while we're working to better our life in the future.
I got no issue. What Shane, I think the thing is you and I philosophically disagree upon what is an impact.
Okay.
I think a lot is an impact.
A lot.
A lot. A
Okay.
lot impacts a school.
Okay.
I mean, if a subdivision of 300 houses, there is a number. There is going to be a number assigned to every lot in that 300 house subdivision of how many junior high students, how many high school students, how many elementary students. That same number applies to that one lot there, and those 3 lots over there, and those 6 lots over there. And so, to say that 50 and less in the impact is not accurate. 50 impacts.
Let me respond to that. Okay, so I will agree with you in the fact that it does impact. It does. You're right. It does impact. However, it's about acceptable impact, right? So the thought there is this. Okay, everybody wanted me to do a little research on where I came up with the numbers. I mean, the truth is this. Since June of 2022, I think they've approved, well, it was communicated to me that the Planning Commission has approved 3 subdivisions, right? 2 was over 100 lots and 1 was less than 100 lots, right? The thought of the 50 was justified based on health, safety, and welfare of the people when it comes to infrastructure. And in addition to that, yes, one residential structure does impact the school system, but a 50-lot subdivision has a lot less significant impact than a 1,000-lot subdivision or a 500-lot subdivision or a 400-lot subdivision. So it was about managing the impact so that it's, it doesn't compromise the school system until we can work together as a team to put all this in place.
Okay, so let's look at Live Oak as an example, and I've got to search back. I'm trying to remember because I was looking at a list from the school board. I think there are 3 elementary schools up there. 2 of them are at capacity, and I don't remember if it's a middle school or junior highs at capacity. And so of the 6 schools up there, 3 of them are at capacity. So how is a 50-lot subdivision, if it's built in the attendance zone of either one of the 2 elementary schools that are at capacity, not impactful, negatively impacting if there are no classrooms?
It does impact it, but it's an acceptable impact. It's not a catastrophic impact.
Wait a second. Up to, something, I can build a 50-lot subdivision and sell those 50 houses faster than I can build a 250-lot subdivision and sell 50 houses.
Well, what's the problem?
Say that again.
Well, what I'm telling you is that 50-lot subdivision will be more impactful than a 250-lot subdivision in a short term.
Okay, what is your logic?
My point is, why do we have an arbitrary and capricious number?
It's not arbitrary and capricious.
Not arbitrary and
that's
capricious.
That's a philosophical
Well,
disagreement.
we can talk more about
Don't
that.
argue about it anymore.
Okay.
I think that we want all.
Let's get
we
some
all want
feedback.
Valdosta to come.
Let's get feedback. Does anybody else want to provide some feedback?
Sat here this long. To Mr. Talbert's point and Mr. Delat's point, I see what they're saying about the resubmittal. If I have a 50-lot subdivision, each house on an acre, 50 acres, and I say, man, I can't move these houses, I misjudged my market, people around here want 2-acre lots. So now I got 2-acre lots and 25 houses. That's got to say I'm putting less of an infrastructure strain, so why do I have to resubmit all this stuff? I definitely get those points, and it's valid points. As far as what he just said about the 50-lot subdivision, what he's saying is I can crank out a 50-lot subdivision and sell it in 6 months. I've cranked out 6 of them in 2 years. I got 300 houses. The other guy's still sitting on 250 houses. I've put more houses on the market than the other guy. Is that your point?
Yeah, that's it.
Thank you.
Your absorption rate is not going to take over.
And what does the
Not quite
moratorium
hear who
work?
that is talking, but it'd be good if you come to the podium.
Matt Hughes, 8242 Wildwood Drive. I've been in real estate for 17 years. Your absorption rate on a 250 lot subdivision is going to take a lot longer for it to impact on a 50. You can get, like he's saying, you can get in and get out on a 50 lot subdivision. It's going to take you a lot longer to sell those houses year over year. We only do 7,000 transactions in 9 parish market in Greater Baton Rouge. So out of Livingston Parish's little pie of that, it's not very many lots, not very many houses. So what he's saying is it's going to take you, your impact's going to be impacted faster on 50 than impacted on a long term of a larger development. Make sense?
Guys,
Okay, but my point there is, then what is the problem with 50 and under for a moratorium? That's
seemed like to me,
what I'm
you as a
applying
developer,
to
real
it.
estate guy would be wanting to go ahead and do the 50s and sell the houses quick.
I don't want a moratorium, be clear, because you're putting a contract in place, I'm gonna use real estate terms, with you're putting due diligence period out there without having a plan in place. So we don't know what we're gonna get at the end of this
There is a plan.
moratorium.
There is a plan. It just
Where
ain't
is it?
documented.
I've been here how many times? We haven't seen a plan.
I communicated verbally you the plan, okay? You want me to tell you again?
I want to see it I want to see the spreadsheet. I want to see what it's gonna be.
Part of the plan is to put the spreadsheet and to communicate the spreadsheet in the next week or two.
So tie it to the moratorium so we know exactly what's going to happen and we know we can hold y'all accountable to
So
do it.
you're
'Cause
saying that you're going to support the moratorium if I have a spreadsheet in a couple of weeks?
I'm saying that I would be open to looking at it if we know what we're going to get at the end of it. But right now we don't know because this is so vague.
I don't think we could know what we're going to get at the end of this. We've
good.
got to go through the process of it. And we
Exactly.
can't get to the process until we hit the pause button. And
Amen.
this is about the people of Livingston Parish. We've got to protect the people.
Let's let Shane say something.
Shane Waller, 15340 East Ridge Drive, Walker. So just like Matt said, so look, and I'm sitting here taking all this in, and it kind of just clicked. Okay, we have to submit a plan for development. Okay, y'all want to see that up front. I gotta see your plans before we're going to give you approval. Now, you're sitting here trying to sell us on a moratorium, and you haven't shown us any plan. I mean, it just clicked with me when I just walked up here. You require a plan before we can get approval to do a development. But you're trying to sell us on a moratorium. Let me see your plan.
Correct.
So I'm going to ask you, just like I asked them other two guys, if I outline a game plan in the next 2 weeks, you're going to turn around and support a 12-month moratorium?
I would have to see it. I don't know. I'm not going to give you an answer on something I haven't seen.
But if that's the only reason you're not
So
in
let me
favor-
add that. Y'all not looking at it right, guys, and I'm not trying to cause any dissension here. I have a planner schedule background. I did over 20-some years in a chemical plant with probably 20,000 people from all over. Sometimes the people wasn't on the job for 6 months. You got to have a plan to know what everything's going on. When you present the plan, it can't be you. It's got to be the planner. When he presents the plan, that's when everybody looks at it, shoots the hose, makes their recommendations, and that's why it takes so long. But you got to have the plan to start. When he presents his plan to you, it doesn't mean that you're going to accept his plan. So now you're asking him to accept your plan that you haven't presented. Always saying if we want this to work for the people, everybody has to buy in. Everybody has to have the same thing. You have a lot more knowledge on this than I have. But I do know I have knowledge as a planner schedule, and I have made my living doing this, and you cannot do a thing until you have that plan, and you tweak it and tweak it and tweak it, and you say, okay, now let's show it to the public. Now let's hold our first meeting, and let's see what we got to do. That's what that's called.
I would support a moratorium if I could see what the scope was. I mean, I don't have a scope that you're showing me.
Okay,
Hey,
so let me
we're
ask
from
you
the
this.
government, we're here to help. I
I'm
mean,
thanking you. So let me ask you this. Okay, wait, Shane, I got a question for you. I mean, so the plan, okay, was verbally communicated to me
Well, I'm
that
hearing
we
it
are
from
going
you.
to, I know.
But let me,
we are-
and I'm gonna save you some
we
breath.
are-
So look, I'm
That's
hearing
not
from
a
you. I
plan.
want to hear from the professionals.
Okay,
Not a plan, though.
okay.
That's not a plan.
And that's not too much to ask.
I know, I'm just
That's
saying,
not a
to
plan.
put together an advisory board and to work together as a team, right, to modify the development ordinances and the zoning ordinances so that they can be strengthened and enhanced over the next 12 months, okay? What more details do you need specifically in the scope and plan so that you support this moratorium? Because a lot of the things that
I know
we're
what I
going
need.
to improve upon, we're going to be researching and studying and working
But you're
on.
gonna shut everything down while you're doing that.
I'm not shutting everything down. What I'm trying to do is
But you should be
is
if it's
put-
a true moratorium. If it's what you're saying is causing a problem, it should be. Because
Okay.
the commercial side could have an adverse effect as well.
Okay,
Amazon want to come in and buy 300 acres and do an Amazon
Okay.
facility.
I see what you're saying.
And everybody's
Okay.
eyes are going to get big because we're going to get revenue from it. But what impact is that going to have if they're in the middle of French settlement with a distribution center trying to go up and down them 2-lane roads?
Okay, so that's a good valid point. But this specific moratorium is specific to the rapid growth
We've
in
had rapid
Livingston
growth out here
Parish.
since 1988. I mean, y'all not the first people to deal with the rapid growth out here. And that's true.
Well, that's what this moratorium is aimed at.
That's
and
what
it's,
this is
it's,
trying
it's
to do.
full on in my
It's a
neck of the
tool
woods.
used by government so that we can manage the rapid growth while we work together as a
All the
team.
work that was done on the last moratorium, I mean, was that for nothing?
Let me say this to that. Okay? That group that worked hard to modify that did the very best job they could. Okay?
I'm not beating
But it
nobody
ain't
up over
nearly about good enough.
Because there's no plan.
But listen,
no
so
plan.
this is the fact of the matter. Whatever takes place, there's a number of council members that are not going to be here to see it through. Now, how is that fair to anyone else that's reelected or elected to a position to have something thrown in their lap without having a plan? They're not going to know anything about it.
Okay, I can respond to that. My response to that is that's totally not true. Okay? Let me tell you.
How's it true?
Because we're going to put together an advisory board, okay? The advisory board is going to be made up of 3 or 4 councilmen, 3 or 4 planning commissioners, maybe a couple administrative people, and it can be a couple of developers on there. It can be, a couple of constituents. And you can also have those that previously served on the Livingston Parish Council that's working the game plan to make our future bright in Livingston Parish.
How do we know we're going to do that? How do we know we're going to do that?
Randy, I wasn't quite finished. They can continue to be on the advisory board and continue to work with that professional planner so that, the right people are in the right places and it's not like it's a whole brand new advisory board. You see what I'm saying? You can continue that team, that advisory board can continue, right? It's not like you have to start all over come January 1 with a whole new advisory board that's been working through a plan, right?
You're going to have different leadership up here, though.
You will have some new leadership, right? But you can have state representatives on this advisory board. You can have developers on the advisory board. You know what I'm saying? It's not like the game plan changes.
Why aren't they in on that process now when working with the plan?
Say that again, Shane.
Why aren't they in on the process now, working with the planner to come up with the plan?
We've just started. This is the first step in the tool to protect the people while we're starting, and we're going to choose.
She said 20 times, so that ain't just starting.
Say that again.
Miss Sandifer's met with him, she said, over 20 times.
I have not over 20 times. I have gone out of my way to
But I'm just
Capital Region
saying,
Planning
that's over
Commission
20
training.
hours.
That's how
I don't want to argue, Shane.
so much.
I'm just asking, so that's a lot of,
I'm gonna
20
stop
hours
just
is a lot of
saying.
time.
Say that again.
20 hours is a lot of time to spend on something, and to not have included all
I
of the
took
council
classes,
members.
Mr. Marler. I took classes. I didn't get one-on-one time with him. That's not true.
I was under the impression that's what it was. I don't know how.
Okay, I'm just explaining to you. I took classes through the Capital Region Planning Commission, which is how I came to know him. Outside of those classes, it's just been regular short meetings.
But the way I'm sitting up here listening, I don't think every
Shane,
council.
let me ask you this. Shane, let me ask you this.
Yes, sir.
You know, I don't want to argue back and forth. Obviously, you're not in favor of this moratorium. I'm in favor of it, okay? But throw all that away. What do you advise to make our future bright? How would you make the future, if you had the opportunity, and we're going to let you talk too, if you had the opportunity to make our future bright and to fix all this, how would you do it? Tell me.
I would take all the money that come into our parish, and we would be one parish. We wouldn't have 8 different districts or 9 different districts, and we wouldn't have 16 different tax codes. That right there shows me that there's a struggle for money in our parish, that the whole parish don't get equal amounts of money. That's part of the problem in our parish. It's me wanting this for my district, this and that, my council. But we're a bigger parish than that, and that gets missed a lot.
Let's be a little bit specific to the development regulations and the zoning regulations. Well, I'm just saying, when it comes to, all right, we know for a fact that we got some concerns with our zoning regulations and our development regulations, right? And I'm not saying that.
But I'm not the planner.
I know. I'm just saying how.
Let me
how
answer.
would? Okay, Randy, you go answer this question.
Let me answer. Everything you saying has to be done. Everything you saying, but there's a sequence of events that has to happen. If you run a business, if you open a restaurant, you got to have a business plan. If they're going to do a subdivision, they got to have their plans and all the stuff. If we're going to change and have a moratorium, we have to have a plan also. We can't just say this is what we're going to do. That has to be a written plan by someone that has already done that. That plan is then distributed for us to study and look at and see what we can and can't do with it. When everybody understands what the plan is and what they're part of the plan, then you go out there and you say, we're going to put this as a public hearing to have a moratorium, and then you let the public on that. But right now, all we're doing is we're pairing up. We get 4 up here, we get 4 down there, we get the citizens on this side, we get the developers on this side. All we're doing is creating friction between everyone.
Let me say this. We're about to end this meeting, okay? We have needed a moratorium in Livingston Parish for 12 to 24 months for the last 5 to 6 years. And we could never get enough support from administration and the council and everybody else to do it. Now's an opportunity, okay? Let's go work together as a team to put this in place. Let's go work to make Livingston Parish a better place to live in the future. You know what I'm saying? That's all, you know, that's where we at on this, guys. I'd love to have everybody's help and support to do this. If it ain't there, then I agree. We'll go regroup. All right? Everybody have a wonderful night. Is it?
Motion to adjourn?
And is there a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.